Galactic Research Station 17 floated in the darkness at the edge of explored space. The station was home to scientists from dozens of alien species, all studying the dangerous region called the Void Reaches. Strange energy storms rolled through that part of space, and understanding them was important work. The station itself was massive, a collection of connected modules that housed laboratories, living quarters, and observation decks. Humans had only joined the Galactic Council 20 years ago. They were still new to this whole galaxy-wide community thing. Most aliens found humans interesting, but unpredictable. Some found them amusing. Others found them annoying. But everyone agreed that humans were different from the other species in ways that were hard to explain. The station had one security officer who everyone feared. His name was Vexthor, and he was a Craxian. The Craxians were an ancient warrior race, and Vexthor was one of their most legendary fighters. He was 40 feet long from nose to tail, covered in black scales that looked like polished obsidian. He had 4 eyes that glowed like molten gold, and when he moved through the station corridors, other aliens pressed themselves against the walls to let him pass. Vexthor had destroyed an entire pirate fleet by himself. That was the story everyone whispered. He had boarded their command ship alone and walked out 3 hours later. The pirate fleet never troubled anyone again. Whether the story was completely true or not, nobody wanted to test it. Vexthor spoke rarely, moved silently despite his size, and never showed interest in anyone or anything except his duty. His duty was simple. Keep the station safe, watch for threats, eliminate dangers. He had done this job for 12 years without a single security breach. Katie Morrison was 10 years old and completely unimpressed by scary reputations. She had arrived at the station 6 months ago with her father, Dr. Paul Morrison. Her father was a xenobiologist, which meant he studied alien life and weird space stuff. Katie thought his job was the coolest thing ever, even though it meant living on a space station instead of on Earth. Katie had brown hair that she usually kept in a ponytail, bright, curious eyes, and a smile that made even the grumpiest aliens crack what passed for a smile on their faces. She was the only human child on the station, which made her something of a curiosity. Alien children were different. Some species kept their young silent and obedient. Other species had young that were aggressive and territorial. Human children were emotional, loud, unpredictable, and asked endless questions. Katie loved the station. She loved seeing different aliens every day. She loved learning about their cultures and languages. She was homeschooled by her father, but her real education came from exploring and talking to anyone who would listen. The gentle Quellan engineer named Torva taught her about the station's power systems. The elderly Mentherian botanist called Elder Sen showed her the hydroponic gardens, where they grew food from a dozen different worlds. And then there was Vexthor. Katie had decided within her first week on the station that she wanted to be friends with the big dragon-looking alien. Everyone told her this was a bad idea. Craxians were solitary hunters, they said. They did not make friends. They especially did not make friends with children from species they barely knew. Vexthor had ignored every alien who tried to be friendly with him for 12 years. He would ignore Katie, too. Katie did not care about any of that. She saw Vexthor standing at his security post near the main corridor junction, watching everything with those glowing golden eyes, and she thought he looked lonely. So she started saying hello to him every time she passed. He never responded. She started leaving small drawings near his post. He never acknowledged them. She would wave at him across the cafeteria. He would look right through her, as if she did not exist. Her father worried about this. "Katie, honey, maybe you should leave him alone. Craxians have their own culture. They do not interact the way we do. He just needs a friend, Dad," Katie would say. "Everyone needs friends." Paul Morrison would sigh and ruffle her hair. He had learned a long time ago that his daughter was stubborn when she believed in something. She got that from her mother. The thought made him sad sometimes, but Katie's smile always helped. 6 months passed. Katie kept trying. Vexthor kept ignoring her. Life on the station continued its normal routine. Then the Zolothi arrived. The Zolothi were an insectoid species. They looked like giant praying mantises, about 7 feet tall, with 4 arms and heads that swiveled in disturbing ways. Their exoskeletons were a deep green color, and their eyes were multifaceted like gemstones. They were brilliant scientists, known across the galaxy for their research capabilities. They were also known for being arrogant and cruel. 4 Zolothi scientists came to Station 17, led by Chief Researcher Krillax. The station commander, a diplomatic Quellan named Felnara, welcomed them warmly. There was a ceremony in the main hall where all the research teams gathered to greet the newcomers. Katie stood with her father in the crowd. She watched as Krillax stepped forward to address everyone. His voice was sharp and clicking, translated by the station systems into smooth galactic common. "We are honored to join this research station," Krillax said. His mandibles clicked together in what might have been a smile. "We bring with us advanced equipment and methodologies that will greatly improve the quality of work here. We look forward to collaborating with species who meet our standards." That last part sounded wrong to Katie. She glanced up at her father and saw his jaw tighten. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Katie watched as Krillax approached her father. "You are the human xenobiologist, correct? Paul Morrison?" "Yes," her father said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome to the station." Krillax looked at the offered hand as if it were something disgusting. How primitive. "Tell me, Dr. Morrison, what exactly qualifies a human to study xenobiology? Your species has been aware of alien life for barely 2 decades. My species has been conducting research for 3,000 years. Katie felt anger flash through her. She started to step forward, but her father's hand on her shoulder stopped her. "We all bring different perspectives to science," Paul said quietly. "I am sure we will learn much from each other." "I doubt that," Krillax said. He turned away without another word, joining his fellow Zolothi across the room. Katie looked up at her father. His face was calm, but she could see the hurt in his eyes. Other scientists had noticed the exchange and were whispering. Some looked sympathetic, others looked uncomfortable. The Zolothi had powerful connections in the Galactic Council. Nobody wanted to offend them. Commander Felnara tried to smooth things over, but the damage was done. The reception ended early. Katie and her father walked back to their quarters in silence. That night, Katie could not sleep. She kept thinking about the way Krillax had insulted her father. Her dad worked so hard. He was smart and kind and dedicated to his research. He did not deserve to be treated like that. She got out of bed and went to her small desk. She pulled out her drawing supplies and started working on something special. She drew a picture of her father standing tall and proud, surrounded by swirling stars and cosmic phenomena. She drew alien friends standing with him, supporting him. And in the background, barely visible, she drew a massive dragon shape watching over everything. The next morning, Katie took the drawing to her father at breakfast. He was quiet, pushing his food around his plate without eating much. "Dad," Katie said, sliding the picture across the table, "I made this for you." Paul looked at the drawing. His eyes went soft and he smiled. It was not his usual bright smile, but it was real. "Thank you, sweetie." "This is beautiful. You are the best scientist on this whole station," Katie said firmly. "Do not let that mean bug guy make you think different." Paul laughed, a real laugh this time. "Okay, kiddo. I will try to remember that." Katie hugged him tight. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too." Across the station in his security post, Vex Thor watched the surveillance feed from the Morrison quarters. He had watched the reception last night. He had seen the insult delivered to the human scientist. He had noted the political dynamics at play. The Zolothi were trouble. He could smell it. But it was not his concern. His job was station security, not station politics. 3 weeks passed, and things got worse. The Zolothi scientists were not just rude. They were actively making life difficult for the human research team. It started small. Dr. Morrison would set up an experiment in the lab, carefully calibrating his instruments for hours. The next morning, he would find the settings changed or the samples contaminated. At first, he thought it was accidents. Space stations had glitches sometimes, but then it kept happening. Only to his experiments. Only to the human research projects. The pattern was too clear to ignore. The Zolothi also started taking credit for discoveries they did not make. Dr. Morrison had been tracking a unique energy signature in the void reaches for months. It was groundbreaking work that could change how scientists understood cosmic radiation. He submitted his findings to the station database, properly documented and peer-reviewed. 2 days later, Krillax presented the exact same findings at a research conference, claiming the Zolothi team had discovered it first. Paul Morrison filed a complaint with Commander Felnara. She listened sympathetically and promised to investigate. But the investigation went nowhere. The Zolothi had friends in high places. They had connections to the Galactic Council's Science Committee. They funded half the station's operating budget. When Paul pushed harder, Krillax filed counter-complaints, accusing the human scientist of sloppy methodology and trying to steal Zolothi research. It was a nightmare. Paul felt trapped. He could not prove the sabotage. The timestamps on the database submissions were somehow altered. Other scientists on the station knew the truth, but nobody wanted to speak up and risk Zolothi anger. Katie watched her father grow more tired and sad each day. He tried to hide it from her, putting on smiles during meals and helping with her homework like normal. But she knew. She always knew when something was wrong. She would hear him working late into the night, redoing experiments that had been ruined. She would see the stress lines around his eyes getting deeper. Katie kept to her own routine as best she could. She studied her lessons every morning. She explored the station's safe zones in the afternoons. She had made real friends among the aliens who lived there. Torva, the Quellan engineer, had a workshop in the lower levels where Katie would sometimes visit. Quellans looked like tall, slender humanoids with skin that shimmered between blue and silver. They were peaceful by nature and believed in harmony above all else. "How is your father?" Torva asked one afternoon while Katie watched him repair a plasma conduit. "He is okay," Katie said, but her voice was small. Torva's large silver eyes looked at her knowingly. "The Zolothi are not kind beings, little one. I am sorry you and your father are facing their cruelty." "Why does not anyone stop them?" Katie asked. Torva's expression was sad. "Politics, child. The Zolothi have power. They have money, and they know how to use both. Commander Felnara is doing what she can, but her hands are tied." Katie also spent time with Elder Sen in the hydroponic gardens. The Mentharian was ancient by any measure, his skin like weathered tree bark, his eyes like deep pools of water. His species lived for hundreds of years and believed in patience and wisdom. Elder Sen tended plants from across the galaxy, coaxing them to grow in artificial light and carefully controlled atmospheres. "Your father is a good man," Elder Sen told Katie one day. "Good people often suffer in the short term, but goodness endures longer than cruelty." "I hope so," Katie whispered. Despite everything happening with her father, Katie never stopped leaving drawings for Vex Thor. If anything, she did it more often. She drew pictures of dragons protecting smaller creatures. She drew Vex Thor standing guard over the station. She drew him flying through space, majestic and powerful. She never saw him pick up the drawings. They would just disappear sometime after she left them. She still did not know that he kept every single one. One evening, Katie was in the gardens with Elder Sen when Torva came to visit. The two aliens were friends and often had tea together in the quiet space among the plants. They did not notice Katie reading in the corner, hidden behind a large fern from a planet called Verdantis. "The situation with the humans grows worse," Torva said quietly. "I heard Krillax speaking to Commander Felnara today. He issued an ultimatum." Katie went very still, listening. "What kind of ultimatum?" Elder Sen asked. "Either Dr. Morrison and his daughter leave the station within 1 week, or the Zalathi will withdraw all their funding. The station cannot operate without that money. We would have to shut down the research and send everyone home." There was a long silence. Katie's hands gripped her book so tight her knuckles turned white. "This is evil," Elder Sen said, his old voice heavy with sorrow. "To punish an innocent man and his child because of pride and jealousy. I am ashamed of what our council permits." "I wish Vexthor would do something," Torva said. "The Zolathi fear nothing except strength. They would not dare continue this if the Craxian opposed them." "Vexthor cannot," Elder Sen replied. "You know the Craxian code. They are bound by honor to remain neutral in all conflicts. They can only act if directly challenged, or if someone formally requests their protection. And even then, such a request carries great weight. A Craxian does not give protection lightly." "It seems a cruel code," Torva said. "It is an old code," Elder Sen corrected. "The Craxians believe that warriors must not interfere in every dispute, or they become tyrants. Their power is so great that they must restrict themselves. But yes, sometimes it means they watch injustice happen and do nothing." Katie felt tears burning her eyes. She slipped out of the garden before the aliens noticed her, running back to her quarters. Her father was not there yet. He was still in the lab, probably trying to salvage another ruined experiment. Katie sat on her bed and cried. She cried because it was not fair. She cried because her dad was the kindest, smartest person she knew, and he was being bullied by mean insects who had more power than heart. She cried because in 1 week they would have to leave the station, leave the friends she had made, and her father's research would be stolen, and his reputation would be damaged. She cried because even Vexthor, who was strong enough to stop all of this, could not help because of some ancient warrior code that made no sense to a 10-year-old girl. Later that night, Katie woke up thirsty and went to get water. The quarters were small, just 2 bedrooms connected by a common area. As she passed her father's bedroom door, she heard something that made her freeze. Her father was crying, actual crying, trying to muffle the sound in his pillow so she would not hear. Paul Morrison never cried, not when Katie's mother had died 5 years ago during a transport accident, not when they faced hardship or difficulty. He always stayed strong for Katie. Hearing him cry now broke something inside her. Katie went back to her room without getting the water. She sat at her desk in the darkness and thought. In 1 week, they would leave. Her father would lose everything he had worked for. The Zolathi would win, unless something changed, unless someone did something. An idea began to form in Katie's mind. It was risky. It might not work. But she had to try. Her father had worked so hard on mapping the void reaches phenomena. He had spent months collecting data, organizing it, analyzing patterns. Katie had watched him work. She had even helped sometimes, sorting data files and making notes. She knew his research almost as well as he did. There was going to be a special celestial alignment in 2 days. Several cosmic phenomena would line up in a way that only happened once every few years. Her father had been planning to observe it from the station's main telescope, but with everything happening, he had probably forgotten. If Katie could capture that data and organize it into a complete map of the phenomena, it would be the perfect gift. It would show. The night of the celestial alignment arrived. Katie waited until her father fell asleep, exhausted from another long day of fighting hopeless battles against Zolathi sabotage. She dressed quietly in the dark, pulling on her station jumpsuit and soft shoes. She grabbed her datapad, already loaded with her father's research files, and a small bag containing her drawing supplies. The station operated on a day-night cycle to help the various species maintain their natural rhythms. During night hours, the corridors dimmed to a soft blue glow and most areas went quiet. Only essential personnel worked the night shift. Katie had studied the duty rosters. She knew which corridors to avoid and which paths would be empty. She slipped out of their quarters and into the hallway. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure someone would hear it, but the corridor was empty. She moved quickly but carefully, staying close to the walls where the shadows were deepest. She had memorized the route Torva had shown her once, the maintenance passages that connected different sections of the station. Katie did not know that the moment she left her quarters, a silent alarm triggered in the security office. Vexthor's 4 golden eyes focused on a monitor showing her small figure moving through the corridors. By all protocols, he should stop her. A child wandering the station at night was a security concern, but he watched her careful movements, her determination, and something made him pause. He tracked her through the camera system instead, ready to intervene if real danger appeared. Katie found the maintenance access panel exactly where Torva had said it would be. She entered the code the engineer had taught her for emergencies. The panel slid open with a soft hiss. Inside was a narrow corridor lined with pipes and conduits, barely wide enough for an adult human. For Katie, it was perfect. She climbed inside and pulled the panel shut behind her. The maintenance corridors were not meant for regular travel. They were hot and cramped and smelled like metal and recycled air. Katie squeezed through the tight spaces, following the mental map she had memorized. Left at the junction, straight past the coolant exchange, right at the power coupling. The sounds of the station systems hummed around her, familiar and strangely comforting. After 20 minutes of careful navigation, Katie reached the access panel that opened into the observation deck. She pressed her ear against it, listening. Silence. Perfect. She entered the override code, and the panel opened. Katie climbed out into the observation deck and immediately gasped. The view was incredible. The entire front wall of the observation deck was transparent, showing the vast expanse of space beyond. And right now, the void reaches were putting on a show. Energy storms swirled in impossible colors. Cosmic dust spiraled in glowing patterns, and there, perfectly aligned, were the 3 phenomena her father had been studying for months. Katie quickly set up her datapad and connected it to the observation deck's instruments. She started recording data, her fingers flying over the controls with practiced ease. Her father had taught her well. She understood the basics of what she was doing, even if she could not grasp all the complex science behind it. For 30 minutes, Katie worked in peaceful concentration. She was so absorbed in creating the perfect gift for her father that she did not hear the door open behind her. "What do we have here?" The clicking, sharp voice made Katie jump and spin around. Krillax stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 other Zolathi scientists. Their multifaceted eyes glittered in the dim light. Their mandibles clicked together in what Katie had learned was their version of a predatory smile. "I am just watching the alignment," Katie said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I am not hurting anything." "You are in a restricted area," Krillax hissed. "You are using equipment without authorization. This is espionage. You are attempting to steal Zolathi research data." "No," Katie said. "I am just making a gift for my dad. Look, I am using his own research files. I am not touching your stuff." Krillax moved closer, his 4 arms spreading wide to block any escape route. The other 2 Zolathi moved to flank him. Katie felt her stomach drop. She was trapped. "Contamination," Krillax clicked. You have contaminated our workspace with your presence. Human biology is incompatible with our sterile protocols. This entire observation deck will need to be decontaminated. Do you know how much that costs?" Katie tried to explain again, but Krillax was not listening. He snatched her datapad from her hands. Katie made a sound of protest and reached for it, but one of the other Zolathi blocked her with a long, hard arm. Krillax examined the datapad, his eyes scanning the screen. Then, deliberately, he threw it against the wall. The datapad shattered into pieces. Hours of Katie's careful work, the map she had been creating, all the data from the alignment, gone in an instant. "That was not yours to break," Katie said, her voice shaking now. "Nothing on this station belongs to humans," Krillax said. "You are parasites. Your father is a failed scientist who steals the work of his betters, and you are a pathetic, weak hatchling who knows nothing of the galaxy." The other Zolathi clicked their mandibles in what sounded like laughter. Katie felt tears beginning to form, but she fought them back. She would not cry. She would not give them the satisfaction. But then Krillax noticed her bag. He pulled it open and found her drawings. Sketches of her father, images of the void reaches, pictures of the friends she had made on the station, and several drawings of Vexthor, carefully detailed, showing the Craxian as a noble guardian and protector. "What is this garbage?" Krillax said. He pulled out one drawing and held it up. It showed Vexthor standing protectively over various alien species, including a small human girl. "You actually believe that monster cares about you? Craxians care about nothing except violence and death." He tore the drawing in half. Then he pulled out another and tore that one too. Katie made a small sound of pain, like something physical had been ripped away from her. Those drawings represented hours of work, yes, but more than that, they represented her hopes, her belief that even the scariest, most distant being could be reached with kindness. "Please stop," Katie whispered. Krillax pulled out more drawings and tore them methodically one after another. "Your father is a failure," he said, clicking each word with cruel precision. "He will leave this station in disgrace. His name will be forgotten. His research will be credited to those who deserve it. He will die in obscurity, and nobody in the galaxy will remember that Paul Morrison ever existed." Something broke inside Katie. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Not tears of fear, though she was afraid. Tears of helplessness. Tears of heartbreak. Her father was the best man in the whole galaxy, and this cruel insect was going to destroy him. And Katie could not stop it. She was just a 10-year-old girl, powerless against political connections and money and ancient prejudices. "Look at this," Krillax called to the other Zolathi. "The human hatchling is crying. How pathetic, how weak. This is what humans are. Emotional, unstable, inferior creatures who have no place among civilized species." The other Zolathi moved closer, their mandibles clicking in amusement. They surrounded Katie, enjoying her tears, feeding on her pain. In their culture, showing emotion was weakness. Weakness deserved mockery. They saw nothing wrong with what they were doing. In their minds, they were simply putting an inferior being in its proper place. Katie sobbed, unable to stop, unable to be brave anymore. She thought of her father crying alone in his room. She thought of all the kindness she had tried to show to a galaxy that seemed to have no room for kindness. She thought of Vexthor and his code that kept him from helping anyone, even when helping was the right thing to do. Across the station, Vexthor watched the security feed from the observation deck. He saw everything. The destroyed datapad, the torn drawings, the systematic cruelty inflicted on a child who had done nothing except try to make her father smile. By Craxian code, this was not his concern. The child was not under his formal protection. The Zolathi had not challenged him directly. His duty was to maintain neutrality in all conflicts between species. He had witnessed countless acts of injustice across his long life and had remained unmoved. This was no different. This was just another example of the strong dominating the weak as nature intended. But Vexthor's 4 golden eyes were locked on one image. Katie Morrison, crying not from physical pain but from emotional anguish. Katie Morrison, who had left him drawings every day for 6 months despite his complete silence. Katie Morrison, who had shown him kindness when she had no reason to expect anything in return. Katie Morrison, who represented something he had forgotten existed in the galaxy. Pure, uncalculating goodness. He thought of every drawing she had given him. He had kept them all. He had to. The door to the observation deck exploded inward with a sound like thunder. Metal groaned and twisted as 40 feet of obsidian-scaled fury entered the room. The temperature dropped instantly as Vexthor's presence filled the space. His 4 golden eyes blazed with an intensity that made the air itself seem to shimmer. The 3 Zolothi froze. Their natural predatory instincts screamed at them to run, but fear locked their limbs in place. Krillax's mandibles clicked rapidly, a nervous tick that betrayed his terror despite his attempts at composure. "This is a restricted area," Krillax managed to say, his voice higher than normal. "You have no authority to be here. I will file a complaint with the station commander. I will contact the Galactic Council. The Zolothi delegation has diplomatic immunity. You cannot touch us." Vexthor did not even look at him. His attention was entirely focused on Katie Morrison, who sat on the floor surrounded by torn drawings and broken equipment, tears streaming down her face. For several long seconds, the only sound was Katie's quiet sobbing and the low hum emanating from Vexthor's scales. Then Vexthor moved, not toward the Zolothi, toward Katie. He lowered his massive head until it was level with the small girl, his 4 eyes meeting her too. When he spoke, his voice was deep enough to vibrate in Katie's chest, but gentle in a way that contradicted everything anyone knew about Craxians. "Child of Earth," Vexthor said in perfect English, each word carefully formed. "I ask you a question that carries great weight. Do you understand?" Katie nodded, unable to speak. "Do you request my protection?" Katie did not understand the significance of the question. She did not know about Craxian guardian oaths or ancient warrior codes or the binding nature of such promises. She only knew that Vexthor was here, that he had finally spoken to her, and that his presence made her feel safe for the first time since Krillax had entered the room. "Yes," Katie whispered. "Please." Something changed in Vexthor's eyes. The golden glow intensified until it was almost blinding. He raised his head and spoke in a language that sounded like stones grinding together and thunder rolling across mountains, the ancient Craxian tongue. The station's translation systems struggled with it for a moment before rendering the meaning into galactic common. "I am Vexthor of the Craxian warrior clans. I declare before all who witness that I am now guardian to Katie Morrison, child of Earth. Her enemies are my enemies. Her pain is my pain. Any who harm her will answer to me. This oath is blood-bound and unbreakable. It is done." The observation deck's systems automatically recorded everything that happened in the space. Those words, that declaration, were now part of the official station records. Legally binding, witnessed by technology and by the 3 Zolothi who stood trembling against the far wall. Krillax realized the magnitude of what had just occurred. Craxian guardian oaths were known across the galaxy. They were rare, sacred, and absolutely inviolable. The Zolothi's diplomatic immunity meant nothing against such an oath. Their political connections were worthless. Vexthor had just placed Katie Morrison under the protection of the entire Craxian warrior culture. "This is ridiculous," Krillax tried to bluster. "You cannot just interfere in a simple disciplinary matter. The child was trespassing. We have every right to detain her and report her actions." Vexthor finally looked at the Zolothi. The temperature dropped even further. His scales began to resonate at a frequency that made the Zolothi's exoskeletons ache. "You will not move," Vexthor said softly. "You will not speak. You will wait." It was not a request. The three Zolothi pressed themselves against the wall, their instincts overriding their pride. Vexthor activated his communications link. "Security to Commander Felnara. Immediate response required in Observation Deck 7. I am invoking tribunal protocols under Craxian Guardian law. This is a Priority 1 situation." There was a moment of shocked silence on the other end. Then Commander Felnara's voice came through, sharp with alarm. "Vexthor, did you say Guardian law? That has not been invoked on this station in 12 years. "It is invoked now," Vexthor replied. "Bring your security team. Bring Elder Sen and Torva as witnesses, and bring Dr. Paul Morrison. His daughter requires him." While they waited, Vexthor moved around the observation deck with surprising delicacy for a creature his size. He began collecting the torn pieces of Katie's drawings, gathering each fragment carefully in his massive claws. Katie watched him through tear-blurred eyes, not understanding what was happening but feeling the fierce protectiveness radiating from him. Within 5 minutes, the observation deck was crowded. Commander Felnara arrived with 2 security officers. Elder Sen and Torva came right behind her. And finally, Paul Morrison burst through the door, his face white with panic. "Katie!" He rushed to his daughter and pulled her into his arms. "Are you hurt? What happened? The commander said there was an emergency." "I am okay, Dad," Katie said, though her voice shook. "I am sorry. I just wanted to make you a gift. I wanted to map the alignment for you. But they broke my data pad and tore my drawings and said mean things about you." Paul held her tighter, looking over her head at the 3 Zolothi and then at Vexthor. His expression was confused and frightened and angry all at once. Commander Felnara stepped forward. "Vexthor, please explain this situation. These 3 Zolothi discovered Katie Morrison in the observation deck," Vexthor said. His voice was calm, but carried an edge that made everyone nervous. "Rather than report her presence through proper channels or ensure her safety, they chose to terrorize a child. I have recorded evidence." Vexthor activated the playback from the observation deck's security system. Everyone watched in growing horror as Krillax destroyed Katie's datapad, tore her drawings, and systematically mocked and humiliated a crying 10-year-old girl. The audio was especially damning. Krillax's voice promising that Paul Morrison would die in obscurity. The clicking laughter of the other Zolothi. Katie's quiet sobs. Elder Sen made a sound of deep distress. Torva's silver skin flushed dark with anger. Commander Felnara's expression went from shocked to furious. Even the security officers looked disgusted. Paul Morrison's face went through several emotions before settling on a cold, controlled rage that was somehow more frightening than yelling would have been. But he said nothing, just held his daughter close. "This is outrageous," Commander Felnara said. "Krillax, you and your team are confined to quarters pending a full tribunal. This behavior is unacceptable under any circumstances, but to deliberately torment a child is unconscionable." "We have diplomatic immunity," Krillax said, but his voice had lost all its confidence. "The Zolothi delegation cannot be punished without council approval." "You do not understand," Vexthor said, and there was something almost pitying in his tone. "You no longer face station discipline. You face me. I have declared Katie Morrison under Craxian Guardian protection. Do you know what that means?" The silence that followed was heavy with dread. Even Commander Felnara looked uncertain. Vexthor continued. "It means that any harm done to her is considered a direct assault on my clan. It means that your actions are not a station matter or a council matter, they are a matter of Craxian honor. And unlike your diplomatic immunity, Craxian honor law supersedes all Galactic Council protocols. Torva spoke up, his voice filled with awe. Guardian oaths are sacred. I have heard of them but never witnessed one. Vexthor, you have not taken a ward in all your years on this station. Why now? Vexthor looked down at Katie. The Galactic Council Tribunal took place 2 days later. Commander Felnara set up the observation deck with holographic communication equipment. Representatives from all the major species appeared as life-sized projections, including Ambassador Linda Grant from Earth. The council chamber looked impressive and intimidating, filled with beings from across the galaxy. Katie sat with her father in the front row. Vexthor stood beside them, a silent guardian whose presence made several of the council representatives visibly nervous. Krillax and the other 2 Zolathi scientists stood on the opposite side of the room, their mandibles clicking nervously. The tribunal leader was a Quellan elder named Vorsas, known for being fair but strict. Her silver skin was marked with patterns that indicated great age and wisdom. She called the session to order and asked Vexthor to present his evidence. Vexthor played the recording from the observation deck. The entire council watched in silence as Krillax destroyed Katie's datapad, tore her drawings, and mocked her father. They heard his cruel words. They saw Katie's tears. They witnessed the systematic psychological torture of a child. When the recording ended, the silence was complete. Even the Zolathi representatives on the council looked disturbed. One of them, an elderly scientist named Thexara, spoke up. "This is shameful," Thexara said. "These actions do not represent Zolathi values. We are scientists, not bullies. We seek knowledge, not the suffering of children." Krillax tried to defend himself. "The human child was trespassing. She was in a restricted area. We had every right to detain her and report the violation." "You had the right to contact security," Vorsas said coldly. "You did not have the right to destroy her property, mock her family, or cause deliberate emotional harm, and you certainly did not have the right to terrorize a 10-year-old child who posed no threat to you." Ambassador Grant spoke next, her voice tight with controlled anger. "My government wants it known that this kind of treatment of human citizens, especially children, is completely unacceptable. We demand justice, and justice you shall have," Vorsas said. She turned to Krillax. "Chief Researcher Krillax, you and your team are hereby expelled from Research Station 17. Furthermore, all 3 of you are barred from Galactic Council research facilities for a period of 10 standard years. Your credentials are under review, and you will face additional penalties from your own government." Krillax's mandibles opened in shock. "This is too harsh. We are valuable scientists. The Council needs our research." "The Council needs scientists with ethics," Thexara said, speaking for the Zolathi delegation. "You have brought shame to our species. Accept your punishment with what dignity you have left." The tribunal continued for another hour, establishing protocols to prevent similar incidents and reinforcing protections for all residents of council stations, especially children. When it finally ended, Krillax and his team were escorted off the station by security. They would never return. After the tribunal, Elder Sen found Paul Morrison in the cafeteria. Katie was getting food with Torva, leaving the 2 adults alone to talk. "You should understand what has happened," Elder Sen said gently. "Vexthor's guardian oath is not temporary. It is for life." Paul looked surprised. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means Vexthor has essentially adopted Katie into his warrior clan. He will protect her until she reaches adulthood by human standards, or until she formally releases him from the oath. Craxian guardian bonds are sacred. They are family bonds." Paul was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "I do not know what to say. I am grateful, but this seems like such a huge commitment for him to make." "It is," Elder Sen agreed. "That is why it is so rare." Vexthor has served on this station for 12 years and never once showed interest in anything beyond his duty. Your daughter changed that. She showed him something important." Paul watched Katie across the cafeteria, laughing at something Torva was saying. She has always been special. Her mother was the same way. They both had this ability to see the good in everyone. "Then treasure that quality," Elder Sen said, "and be grateful that a warrior who could destroy battleships chose instead to protect your daughter's smile." That evening, Paul Morrison went to find Vexthor. The Craxian was in his security office reviewing patrol schedules. He looked up when Paul entered. "Dr. Morrison," Vexthor rumbled, "how may I help you?" "I wanted to thank you properly," Paul said. "What you did for Katie, what you are doing for her, it means everything to me. I do not know how to repay that." Vexthor was silent for a long moment. His 4 golden eyes studied the human scientist with an intensity that might have been frightening if not for the gentleness behind it. "You do not owe me anything," Vexthor said finally. "I owe Katie. For 6 months she showed me kindness without expecting anything in return. She left me drawings depicting me as a hero when I had given her no reason to see me that way. She believed in goodness when the galaxy kept proving her wrong." "She is a lot like her mother," Paul said softly. "Then her mother was wise," Vexthor replied. "I have lived for over a century. I have traveled to hundreds of worlds. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have witnessed cruelty in forms you cannot imagine, and through it all I remained neutral. I told myself that was honor, that was strength." "What changed?" Paul asked. "I saw Katie crying," Vexthor said simply. "And I realized that my code, my neutrality, my careful distance from the conflicts of others, all of it was just an excuse to not care, an excuse to not feel, an excuse to not take responsibility for the suffering I could prevent. Your daughter reminded me what I had forgotten. Power without purpose is just violence. Strength without compassion is just cruelty. Honor means nothing if it allows you to watch the innocent suffer." Paul felt tears in his eyes. "Thank you for learning that lesson. Thank you for choosing to care." "Thank her," Vexthor said. "She is the teacher. I am merely the student who finally paid attention." Over the next few weeks, life on Research Station 17 returned to normal. Without the Zolathi's interference, Dr. Morrison's research flourished. Other scientists who had been silent before now came forward to collaborate. Paul's work on the void reaches phenomena gained recognition across the scientific community. The station commander even apologized for not acting sooner to stop the Zolathi's bullying. But the biggest change was in Katie's daily routine. Now, when she explored the station, Vexthor was often nearby. Not hovering or restricting her freedom, but present, a watchful guardian. He taught her about Craxian culture, their philosophy, their history. He showed her basic defense techniques, modified for her small human frame. They were practical lessons, yes, but more than that, they were bonding moments. Katie also taught Vexthor. She taught him about human art and music. She explained why humans told stories and why emotions were not weaknesses but strengths. She showed him that being vulnerable did not mean being weak. Vexthor, who had spent a century building walls around himself, slowly learned to let them down. The other aliens on the station watched this unlikely friendship with growing warmth. Torva often joined them for meals. Elder Sen would find them in the gardens, discussing philosophy and the meaning of courage. Even Commander Felnara remarked that the station felt different now, warmer somehow, more like a true community. 1 month after the tribunal, Katie came to Vexthor's quarters carrying a large folder. She had spent days working on something special, and now it was finally ready. "I made you something," Katie said, holding out the folder. Vexthor took it carefully. Inside was a drawing, but this one was different from all the others. It was larger, more detailed, more carefully planned. It showed Vexthor standing in the center of the station's main corridor. Around him were all the different alien species who lived there. They were not hiding from him or fearing him. They were standing with him, looking to him for protection and guidance. And in front of Vexthor, holding his massive claw in her small hand, was Katie. At the bottom of the drawing, in Katie's careful handwriting, were the words, "My guardian, my friend, my hero." Vexthor stared at the drawing for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher than usual. "This is beautiful, Katie. Thank you." "Do you really like it?" Katie asked. "I will treasure it forever," Vexthor said, and he meant it. He placed the drawing in the very center of his wall where he could see it every day. Katie smiled, that same bright smile that had first caught his attention 6 months ago. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Will you always help people who need it, like you helped me?" Vexthor looked at his wall of drawings, all the kindness this small human had shown him when he had given her nothing in return. He thought about his old code, his old beliefs about neutrality and non-interference. He thought about how hollow those beliefs seemed now. "Yes," Vexthor said, "I promise you, Katie Morrison. I will never ignore a cry for help again. You have taught me that the greatest strength is not the ability to destroy, but the choice to protect. That true honor is not remaining neutral in the face of suffering, but standing up for those who cannot stand for themselves." Katie hugged his massive foreleg, the only part of him she could reach. "That is what heroes do." "Then I will try to be worthy of that word," Vexthor said softly. In the years that followed, Vexthor kept that promise. He remained the security chief of Research Station 17, but his approach changed. He no longer simply observed conflicts, he stepped in when the weak were threatened. He protected those who needed protection. He became not just a guardian to Katie, but a guardian to the entire station community. And it all started because one small human girl believed that even the most fearsome warrior in the galaxy could be reached with kindness. She proved that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or physical power. It was compassion. It was the courage to care even when caring was hard. It was the belief that everyone, no matter how distant or cold they seemed, deserved friendship and dignity. Katie Morrison taught a legendary Craxian warrior that strength without compassion was just violence. And Vexthor taught her that even the smallest act of kindness could change hearts, break down walls, and transform the galaxy one friendship at a time, who was still clutched in her father's arms. Slowly, carefully, he placed something on the floor in front of them. It was a small container, and inside were dozens of drawings. Every single picture Katie had ever left for him over the past 6 months. Carefully preserved, organized by date, treasured. "Because this child has shown me something I had forgotten," Vexthor said quietly. "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing kindness despite receiving none in return. Every day for 6 months, Katie Morrison greeted me with friendship. She drew pictures for a warrior who never acknowledged her. She believed that even the most distant being could be reached with compassion. She was right." Katie stared at the container of drawings. "You kept them? All of them?" "All of them," Vexthor confirmed. "They reminded me why warriors exist, not to dominate, not to remain neutral in the face of cruelty, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves. I have failed that duty for too long. I will not fail it anymore." Paul Morrison looked at Vexthor with an expression of profound gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you for protecting my daughter." "Thank her," Vexthor said. "She taught an old warrior that his code was incomplete. Strength without compassion is just violence. I will not make that mistake again." Eldie himself, it meant nothing. that he simply had not bothered to dispose of them. But that was a lie. He had kept them because they touched something in him that his warrior code had tried to bury. They reminded him that strength without purpose was just violence, that honor without compassion was just cruelty dressed in pretty words. Vexthor rose from his security station. His massive form moved through the corridors with speed that would have terrified anyone who saw him. His scales began to emit a low, resonant hum that made the walls vibrate. His 4 eyes blazed with something that had been building for 6 months, waiting for this moment. The Craxian Code said he could not interfere. The Craxian Code demanded neutrality. The Craxian Code had guided him for over a century. For the first time in his long life, Vexthor decided that his code was wrong. That his work mattered, that she believed in him, that his research was important and beautiful and worth fighting for. The observation deck would be the best place to watch the alignment. She could use the station's systems to record everything and compile it into a comprehensive map. Her father would have his masterwork, even if they had to leave. Maybe it would make him smile again. Maybe it would help him remember why he loved this work in the first place. Katie did not think about the fact that the observation deck was in a restricted section. She did not think about the fact that it was near the Zolothi laboratories. She did not think about what might happen if she was caught. She only thought about her father's tears and how desperately she wanted to make them stop. 2 days later, Katie would put her plan into action. 2 days later, everything would change. But for now, she sat in her dark room and planned, while somewhere across the station, Vexthor stood at his post and watched the monitors with glowing golden eyes, waiting for a moment that had not yet arrived. Would monitor the situation, but he would not interfere. That was the Craxian way. Observe. Protect only when directly threatened. Remain neutral in all conflicts. He switched the feed to another camera. His duty continued. The Zolothi were just another group of scientists. The humans were just another research team. It meant nothing to him. That was what Vexthor told himself. But somewhere deep in his quarters, hidden where nobody could see, he had kept every drawing that Katie Morrison had ever left for him. He did not know why he kept them. He did not examine that question too closely. He returned his attention to the monitors, watching the station's corridors with unblinking golden eyes. His duty was clear. His code was absolute. Nothing would change that. Nothing at all.